Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I would like you to think of the single biggest accomplishment of your life. Take a moment, just think about it in your mind. Done? Great. Now, how about a show of hands? Is it A, an admission to a great college? Perhaps landing your dream job? Or something amazing you did for your family? Now, take a moment and think about how this accomplishment came to be. Most of us are modest in public, but deep down, we congratulate us on our logical approach, our intelligence, and our hard work. Things like creativity and the power of the subconscious mind are good to talk about, but not really the important factors, right? Hi, my name is Amit Khetan, and I'm a 43-year-old entrepreneur, a digital marketer, and someone who has failed way too many times with logic and hard work alone. Today, I would like to share 3 incidents from my life. I had been programmed a certain way by my parents, society, and my life experiences, but these incidents challenged my beliefs completely. So back in 1998, I was a happy teenager riding the early internet wave in India. My best friend and I had taught ourselves HTML, and we had started a bunch of internet portals. We were lucky to get great press coverage and were happy to make a thick file out of the clippings. Somewhere at the back of the minds, we thought, hey, we're having great fun, but will this get eyeball things make us serious money? Are we wasting our time chasing this dream? So logically, the thing that appealed was an MBA degree, where you could learn marketing, finance, and people management. I wanted to learn all this and then get back to business. I lived in Ahmedabad, a city in the western part of India, which was also famous for the prestigious IIM-A, one of the best B schools in the country and in fact the world. I passed IIM-A on the way to college every day and absolutely fell in love with the campus. I talked to a few seniors in my college, and a few things became painfully obvious to me. As far as I could tell, most people who get in are either folks from IITs or from prestigious colleges like St. Stephen's and SRCC. I found out much later that this was not really true, but at that time I felt I had a much lower chance as I was a simple BBA grad. Secondly, out of the 200,000 people who write the CAT exam each year, only about 1,000 people make the first level filter. And out of this 1,000, only 180 people survive the group discussion and personal interview stage. Imagine being a part of the unlucky 820. Enough to scar you for life, I was sure. Third, the fee for this course was around 2.5 lakh rupees, which was a very large chunk of my family's annual income at that time. And finally, the number of people from Gujarat, my home state, who made it to IIM-A was not even 1 per year on average. So aiming for IIM Ahmedabad was a hopeless dream. Sure, prepare all you want, but be ready to settle for one of the younger IIMs or another B school. At some point, this hopelessness turned into anger. Why didn't I have a background where I stood an actual chance? While hanging out at the famous tea stall outside IIM-A, I met a second-year student from the campus. He heard me out and said something that changed my life from that point forward. He showed me a photo of his dorm room and said, Amit, every night when you sleep, just think of yourself sleeping in a similar room at IIM-A next year. Don't worry too much about the specific steps you'll take or the plan you make. They will fall in place. Now, this seemed like pretty stupid advice, and I thought he was making fun of my situation. But I was so out of options that I decided to give it a try. After a week or so of this, I was motivated enough to find out the exact date of the CAT exam. I then put up a handwritten countdown timer on my desk to track that date. I would change that date every morning and felt, hey, I could at least give this a serious shot. Side note, I'm still using that timer technique to track important events in my life. In fact, I brought the one I'm using in my office to show you guys. So it's something like this. I would manually change the date every day, and that would put pressure on me that the date is approaching, and subconsciously that pressure would grow. A few weeks later, the director of my CAT coaching center pulled me aside and said, hey, Amit, you seem to be spending a lot of time here. Why don't you also try a few books in mental maths and speed reading? He gifted me these 3 books, and they were an absolute game changer. I began spending 12 hours every day in that dingy basement, solving problem books over and over. One day, I came across the file of an ex-student who had gotten to IIM-A last year and had done his prep here. Wow! So now I knew somebody not only from Gujarat, but from this exact same institute who had made it. Things were finally falling into place. and I was still imagining myself in that dorm room each night. Now the day of the exam, and I was a bundle of confidence. I am going to do this, I thought. I went in, solved that paper, and came out having attempted only 72 out of the 165 total questions. My mentor heard me out and said, 72 is too low. Spend some time to mourn and process this, and then get started for next year. I could not believe it. It did not compute. Why did I attempt at least 100 to 120 questions? I was heartbroken, but I was so used to dreaming about that dorm room that I continued doing that out of sheer habit, much to my annoyance, I might add. Fast forward a couple of months later, I got calls from all 6 IIMs by telegram. Apparently, that particular year, the paper was extremely hard, and only people who had attempted less made it due to negative marking. I started going for my interviews one by one. For the IIM Calcutta one, I learned that I had accidentally ticked admission boxes for both PGDM, which was a regular MBA course, and PGDCM, a computer-oriented course typically attracting people from engineering backgrounds. The PGDCM panel was skeptical. They said, hey, what's a guy like you doing here? For example, would you know the first thing about wall and floor functions? I told the panel, sir, I'm hearing these words for the first time, but I know one thing with 100% certainty. If you give me a seat here, I will learn the fastest because I know I'm beginning from below zero. I got that admission. While preparing for the crucial IIM-A interview, I made a list of the 50-odd professors who could potentially form my interview panel. I researched each and every one of them and memorized their profile. The idea was that I should be able to greet my interview panel by name and compliment them on their area of expertise. Ultimately, I got final admission in IIM Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Calcutta, both PGDM and DCM, Lucknow, Indore, and a few other nationally ranked B schools. I then got to know that banks had started to fund students from weaker backgrounds without much paperwork or a guarantor. The fee problem faded away in the background. To this date, I am convinced that had I followed the logical path, I, an average student from a modest background, would never have made it to IIM-A. Now, post IIM-A, I thought I had made it in life. I have crossed into a zone of happiness and prosperity. It took me 10 years to get over this notion. Here I was, all of 31, and thinking of marriage, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. I was classically late in the Indian context, you see. Even worse, I was in a dark place emotionally. I was overweight and didn't know how to meet interesting women. I felt I had nothing else to offer beyond an IIM-A tag and a decent lifestyle. I was browsing the internet one day and came across an image of a very regular-looking Indian girl sitting in an airport. She seemed like the perfect person I would want to marry, at least from appearance alone. Though I did not know who she was, I printed out that photo and wrote 3 things I wanted from a potential spouse. She should be kind, she should love to eat out, and she should be a cheerful person. I didn't know it then, and I would learn this 5 years later in my digital marketing role, but I was actually putting together a user persona and was trying to make it real. I thought this dream thing had worked for me before, so there's no harm in trying it again, right? So every night, I imagined myself going out on a date, a movie night, or long walks with her. I imagined coming home in the evening and being greeted by this loving wife and 2 kids. Sometime after all this, I found the motivation to join a gym. I then joined 2 separate dance classes back to back, which for people who knew me was a completely crazy and out of character thing to do. I realized that unless I fixed myself and made myself an emotionally desirable person, I would never attract the right person in my life. I decided that I'll speak to at least 2 new people every day, even if it was an uncomfortable thing for me to do. A few months after this, the painfully overweight and shy guy I was then, which by the way I have reverted to now, changed into someone who was in the best shape of his life. A person who had the confidence to put on his dancing shoes and get up on a stage. It was then that I began to meet women in the matrimonial context. I found that girls in the same situation were equally scared of outcomes. I finally met my life partner, who after our marriage said, I was really scared to get married, but I said yes to you, as you seem super confident that things will be great after marriage. I'm not sure if she still feels the same way, and I don't know why such an amazing person came into my life. But we now have 2 boys, and I get to come home to the dream I had dreamt for so long. Hey, this dream thing worked twice for me. Finally, fast forward a few years, and I found myself running an IT company out of a 700 square feet rented office. It hurt to cut checks each month for the rent and to see it increase each year. I had worked with Citibank in senior positions, and the comparison with the fancy MNC offices kept playing on my mind. In hindsight, it was a really bad context to compare with when you're running a scrappy startup. The real desire in my heart was to own an office twice as large in the best building in town. I crunched the numbers and quickly realized. First, no bank would lend me the required money. I had already bought a house and could not qualify for even 25% of the required amount. Secondly, none of my friends and family members were in a position where they could lend me anything close to what I needed. And finally, my business was not doing so well that I could pull this kind of money out of it. So even though I knew this was hopeless, I decided to do something different this time. Every morning after reaching office, I started writing in a notebook. It is January 2017, and I'm sitting in my own 1400 square feet office in the best building in town. I covered a page every day writing this. This is one of the pages from it. To be honest, this seemed a bit crazy to me, so I kept this strictly to myself. Even my wife didn't know. A few months later, one of my close friends invited me to his newly purchased office at one of the fanciest buildings in town. And wow, was it fancy. It was designed by a German architectural firm, and it was one of the only handful of projects in India at that time. All of us were there in his newly purchased unit. He jokingly said, "Hey Amit, the office next door is vacant. Why don't you buy that and we'll become neighbors?" We all laughed it off, but the idea stuck in my head. I kept covering my notebook with that sentence. It is January 2017, and I'm sitting in my own 1400 square office in the best building in town. But this time, I had the name of the building to go along with it. A few weeks later, the relationship manager from my bank visited me. He said, "Sir, we have a new program where we lend not on the basis of tax returns, but on the basis of business cash flows. And you qualify for about 1 crore. Do you need such a loan?" "Sign me up, my friend," I said. With my savings and loan, I was now only 20 lakhs short. Somehow, our contact helped me arrange a meeting with the builder. I told him about my problem. He said they normally don't do this, but he was okay with taking a 1-year post-dated check as he welcomed people from IIM background in his flagship building. The deal went through, and around end January 2017, early February 2017, I was sitting in that office that I had dreamt of only on paper till now. The office was not 1400 square feet. In fact, it was slightly larger, and it came through me, not through choice, but through circumstances. Looking back, I know that in all these 3 incidents, hard work, planning, and grit were critically important, but they were not the only factors driving me forward. The words from the gentleman at the IIM-A tea stall come back to me. "Amit, every night when you sleep, just think of yourself sleeping in a similar room at IIM-A next year. Don't worry too much about the specific steps you'll take or the plans you'll make. They will fall in place." This is the power of creativity, dreams, and belief, and how they changed my life. Thank you so much for your time and encouragement today. I'm truly grateful for it. Thank you.